This one's going to be a strange one. In this video, we're not going to drive around looking for snakes. We're going to talk about my paranormal experience, which is fitting because it's almost Halloween. So why not talk about the ghostly experience I had in South Carolina? Now, before I move on and tell you about the happening, I have to tell you, everything you're about to hear is my actual experience, and it kind of freaked me out. This year, on September 3rd, in coastal South Carolina. That day, my dad and I were cruising around and looking for snakes. It was a decent day. The highlights were 2 baby canebrakes, and at the end of the day, we found a nice copperhead. After finding the copperhead, it was pretty late. It was time to find a campsite. And by campsite, I mean an appropriate spot deep in the forest. Now, something I didn't think about at the time is all the history that has happened in South Carolina, specifically Francis Marion National Forest. And I mean a lot of history. Some of it goes back over 4,000 years, if not longer. That's from Native Americans through the Revolutionary War and up until now. And who really thinks about stuff like that, especially when you're driving around and looking for snakes? However, it's something special thinking about the spots you're traveling have been traveled for a long time. And in some places, it does, need I say, put out a certain emotion to the area. Francis Marion definitely gives me that feeling. To me, it's the experience of the numinous, but maybe you haven't had that experience, or maybe you have, but you keep it inside because it's kind of weird. And we know things about nature that things like that aren't possible. So is it all in our heads? Let me get back to the story. The campsite my dad and I picked was way down a jeep trail. It ended at a Carolina bay. I parked my Jeep facing the trail and we set up camp behind it. We had everything set up and I was closing my eyes in less than 10 minutes. The night was surprisingly quiet, considering the closeness to the Carolina Bay. There was no frogs calling and the air was cool and still. The only thing that broke the silence was the occasional cricket chirp and the 3 a.m. screaming contest between 2 barn owls. But those were just from the few times I woke up staring through the no-see-um netting at the stars. Other than that, my main memory of the night came from a strange dream. I dreamt I was with some people searching the area. Who were the people? I don't know, that part was fuzzy. However, I was frantically looking. At the same time I was searching, I was able to acknowledge to myself that I was asleep and this was a dream. Even more interesting, the spot we were searching was the area of the campsite. Now, I can't quite tell you if it was day or night in the dream. Everything was clear, however, it felt quite dark. Getting closer to the end of the search, I found a tarp. And underneath the tarp was a severed man's head. It was buried up to its ears in soil. Beside the head were 2 hands. There was also melted butter in its left eye. I don't quite know what that part means. That part's strange. At that time, I woke up. It was 7 o'clock. I shook my head and said, wow. What a strange dream. Now I know you're thinking, Mike, you just had a crazy dream because you were sleeping in some spooky woods. And yeah, that's what I thought at the time. Anyway, let me move on to the rest of it. So the rest of the morning went pretty normal. We picked the camp up, got up, and got ready to do some cruising. Now I was messing around with a Coke can, talked to my dad, and I'm over here popping the top and it's making an interesting noise. And I said, hey, what would you do if you heard this in the woods? My dad naturally says, you know, it kind of sounds like cricket frogs. And I'm still popping the top and he elaborates and he says, yeah, and if I go walk over to it, maybe I would see just 2 hands holding the can. And at that point I go, that's interesting. I had a dream with 2 hands and also a head. And he goes, well, that's weird. At that point I told my dad the dream and we both kind of acknowledged that the area we were in was kind of spooky. Now hold your judgment. I know what you're thinking. I've been around the Southeast for a while, and I've been to a lot of national forests, and I've done quite a bit of solo camping. This is one of my first times I've actually had the spooky feeling in the woods. But let me continue. Needless to say, we didn't stay another night. We cruised the day, and then we headed back down to Florida. The next day, I was having a conversation with a coworker, and I was telling him the strange dream. He said, you should look up to see if anyone died in that area. And I said, that would be freaky, but yeah, let me do that. It didn't take me long to find out. Turns out, something happened very close to where we were camping. I'm going to leave the man's name out of it. It just doesn't seem right. However, the description I'm going to give, you can find it pretty easily. And it goes something like this. A newlywed couple, which were drug addicts in some sort of way, they killed a man by shooting him in the head, and they chopped his body up and spreaded him across the road. And when I mean spread him out, it took the police a week to find all of his body parts. The original people that found him found his head in a bag. And the crazy part is the little Jeep trail that we camped on was right off the road that they scattered him on. You can't get to that trail unless you travel that road. So that's interesting, I think. So that's a brief story that you can easily find on the internet. However, that's not it. After that point, I was like, you know what? I should look up my pictures of the campsite. The first few pictures I looked at of the campsite, nothing, just normal campsite. The last picture was need I say interesting, and each of these pictures are in different angles. I zoomed into the back window of my Jeep. Yeah, there was a face, and not just one. If you zoom in more, you can see kind of multiple faces. It's a little freaky. Now, if I saw the picture without having the dream, I would have been like, well, that's just a reflection coming through the trees and it made a face. And no doubt, that's what it is. The human brain is made to pick out faces. It's part of our predator awareness type deal. But everything put together kind of really made me think on this one. Paranormal stuff like that isn't real. How could it be? That could explain it. Perhaps in 2015, I read an article on the murder there. As much as I remember, I don't think I did, but maybe it was locked up somewhere in my brain, and sleeping there kind of awoke it, and I had a crazy dream like that. I can't really dismiss that, even though I don't remember reading anything about that. I think there's really only two ways I can explain it. The first, it came from my subconscious and it happened to correlate with reality. Or it was an actual ghost messing with my head as I was sleeping. Either way, I don't think I can narrow it down anymore. Ghost would be outside of nature, so how could one prove it? And I don't know enough about the subconscious to begin to explain it. However, I would like to point out the possibilities of both, even though we are in an age of knowing. And by that, I mean we know more now than ever in human history. But yet, there's still people that believe in the supernatural, and I don't think it's complete ignorance. Nor do I completely believe these feelings are the results of predators preying on us in our evolutionary past. What do you think? Let me know. I'm Michael Dye, and next time we'll get back to finding snakes and stuff. Bye.